He owns 47% of my company. My father's voice cut through the boardroom silence like a knife. I turned to look at my husband, Wesley, waiting for him to deny it, to laugh it off, to explain this was some terrible misunderstanding. His expression didn't change. He just sat there, fingers steepled on the mahogany table, completely calm. The board members froze, everyone staring at him, at me, at my father. Wesley finally spoke, his voice smooth as glass. "It's just business, Cam. Just business." He'd hidden this from me for 2 years, bought nearly half my father's company, using money and access he only had because he married me, and he called it business. My father's knuckles were white where they gripped the table edge. The vein in his temple pulsed visibly, but it was Wesley's face that broke something inside me. That smirk, small, satisfied, victorious. He thought he'd already won. "My name is Camille Delancey." And in that moment, staring at my husband's arrogant expression, I realized he'd never loved me. He'd loved what I represented. Access. Wealth, power, an empire he could infiltrate and claim as his own. What he didn't know, I wasn't just the daughter in this room. I was about to become the one who rewrote everything. Wesley leaned back in his chair, completely comfortable, like he belonged at this table more than I did. "Gentlemen," he said, addressing the board, but pointedly not looking at me. "This shouldn't come as a surprise. I've been transparent about my investments." My father stood abruptly. "Transparent? You used my daughter's trust fund to make strategic investments that benefited everyone," Wesley interrupted. "The company's value has increased 23% since I came on board." He finally glanced at me. That same condescending smile he wore when explaining complicated financial concepts. The smile that said, "You wouldn't understand. Camille's been busy with her charities and social calendar," he continued, voice dripping with false sympathy. I didn't want to burden her with tedious business details. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. My father's face turned red, but I stayed perfectly still, because something crystallized in that moment. Wesley had underestimated me, assumed I was decorative, assumed I'd never ask questions, assumed I'd stay in my assigned role, the beautiful wife who smiled at fundraisers and stayed out of real business. He'd built his entire strategy on that assumption, and he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. Let me take you back. 2 years ago, everything seemed perfect. Wesley proposed at my favorite restaurant, photographers conveniently positioned to capture every angle. The ring was enormous, the proposal was public, the pressure was immediate. Everyone called us the perfect couple. He was charming, successful, from a good family, meaning they had just enough money to access our circles but not enough to threaten our position. My father approved. "He's ambitious," Dad said. "That's good. You need someone who understands business." I should have heard the warning in those words. The wedding was in Martha's Vineyard. 300 guests, covered by all the society pages. I wore my grandmother's veil and cried real tears. Because I believed I was marrying someone who loved me. The signs were there from the beginning, I just didn't want to see them. Wesley asked more questions about company structure than about my dreams. Spent more time in my father's study than with me. Called my master's degree in art history adorable. But I told myself he was interested in my family, that he wanted to understand my world, that his ambition was attractive, not alarming. I was so wrong. 6 months into our marriage, Wesley started having private meetings. "Investor drinks," he'd say, kissing my forehead as he left. "Business dinner. Quick meeting with your father." I didn't think much of it, until the night I ran into my mother at the country club. "Lovely dinner last Tuesday, wasn't it?" she said. I smiled blankly. "Which dinner?" "At the Carlisle. With your father and Wesley." "You looked tired, dear, but the conversation was fascinating." I hadn't been there. "Oh, right," I lied smoothly. "Yes, it was lovely." But my mind raced. Wesley had told me he was meeting investors that night, not my parents. When I asked him about it later, he barely looked up from his laptop. "Your dad wanted to discuss quarterly projections. Boring stuff. I didn't want to subject you to 3 hours of financial talk." He made it sound thoughtful, like he was protecting me. But what he was really doing was excluding me. From my own family's business, from conversations about my own inheritance, building relationships I didn't know existed, creating alliances I didn't understand. Until it was too late. The prenuptial agreement arrived 3 days before our wedding. I was drowning in last-minute details, seating charts, flower arrangements, family drama. Wesley handed me a thick stack of papers. "Just standard stuff," he said. "Our lawyers talked. Everything's fair." I trusted him. Trusted my father, who'd apparently reviewed it, signed it without reading every clause. Big mistake. The prenup protected the Delancey family assets in case of divorce. But it also did something else. Something I didn't discover until much later. It granted Wesley limited power of attorney over certain trust accounts. For administrative purposes. For streamlining household finances. My lawyer later told me the language was deliberately vague. Technically legal. Morally bankrupt. But at the time I signed in the bridal suite, champagne in one hand, pen in the other, surrounded by bridesmaids telling me how lucky I was, how handsome he was, how perfect our life would be. I signed away more than I knew, and Wesley watched me do it, knowing exactly what those clauses meant, knowing exactly how he'd use them. I just smiled and went back to choosing between ivory and cream napkins. 10 months after the wedding, I tried logging into our joint financial account. Access denied. I tried again, still locked out. I called Wesley at work. "Hey, I can't get into the account. Did something change?" "Oh yeah, I updated the security settings. Too many data breaches these days." "Can you send me the new password?" Pause. "Honestly, Cam, you don't really need to stress about that stuff. I've got it handled. It's our joint account, and I'm managing it. That's what husbands do, right?" He laughed, like it was charming. Like I should be grateful he was taking care of things. But something felt wrong. I'd still like access. Sure, I'll set you up with view-only access this weekend." Sound good? It didn't sound good, but I said yes, because I didn't want to seem paranoid, didn't want to be the suspicious wife, didn't want to admit something felt very wrong. The weekend came and went. No access. When I brought it up again, Wesley sighed. "The bank's being difficult about adding users. I'll handle it next week." Next week never came. And I was slowly, carefully being locked out of my own financial life. My father stopped including me in quarterly reviews. For years, he'd walked me through the company's performance, explained strategies, asked my opinion, then suddenly, nothing. I asked him about it over lunch. "Dad, you haven't sent me the quarterly reports." He looked up from his salmon. "Oh, I assumed you were busy." "Busy with what?" "Wesley mentioned you were overwhelmed with your charity work. Didn't want to add more to your plate." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Wesley had told my father I was too busy? Without asking me? I'm never too busy for Delancey Holdings. My father patted my hand. "I know, sweetheart, but Wesley's been very helpful. He asks great questions, very engaged." Of course he was engaged. He was building his own empire using mine. I want to be included again. "Absolutely. I'll have my assistant add you to the distribution list." But the damage was done. Wesley had positioned himself as the interested, engaged son-in-law. While painting me as distracted and uninterested, he was systematically replacing me. In my own family business. And everyone thought it was normal. Thought it was sweet that my husband was so involved. Nobody saw what I was starting to see. The discovery came by accident. Wesley left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. He'd gone upstairs to take a call. I wasn't snooping, just clearing space for groceries. But the email tab caught my eye. Subject, Re-Consolidating Stake, Delancey Holdings. My blood went cold. I glanced toward the stairs, heard his voice muffled through the ceiling. Clicked the email. It was a thread between Wesley and someone named Philip Brennan, a name I didn't recognize. The latest message read, "Confirmed, your position is now 47% through the Nevada Holding Company. Congratulations, you're almost there." I scrolled down, found earlier messages, discussions of share purchases, voting blocks, strategic acquisitions, all using accounts linked to my trust fund. Money I'd inherited from my grandmother. Money that was supposed to be untouchable. But somehow, Wesley had access, and he'd been using it to buy his way into my family's company for 2 years, in secret, building a position strong enough to challenge my father's control. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, quickly closed the browser, moved to the fridge like nothing had happened. "Hey babe," he said, kissing my cheek. "What's for dinner?" I smiled. Surprise. I contacted Amanda Preston the next morning. We'd gone to law school together, well, until I dropped out to marry Wesley. Or rather, paused my degree. That's what I'd told everyone. Really, Wesley had convinced me I didn't need it. You're going to be running charities and foundation boards, he'd said. Not arguing cases. I'd believed him. Amanda met me at a coffee shop far from our usual haunts. Camille, long time. She hugged me warmly. What's going on? I slid the prenup across the table. Hypothetically, what does this clause mean? She read it carefully. Her expression changed. This gives him power of attorney over trust accounts? Hypothetically. Camille? She looked up at me. This isn't hypothetical, is it? I didn't answer. She read more. Her jaw tightened. He could use this to authorize transactions without your explicit consent. It's vague enough to cover a lot of ground. Like buying shares in a company? If those shares were purchased using trust funds, yes. She set down the document. Are you asking because he did this? I met her eyes. I'm asking because I think he's positioning himself to take majority control of my father's company. Amanda whistled low. Then you need a real lawyer. Now. Wesley didn't come home for my birthday dinner. I'd made reservations at our favorite restaurant. Bought a new dress, waited, he texted at 7:30. So sorry, babe. Closing something big. Can't get away. Rain check? No apology, no specificity, just something big. He came home at midnight with a generic gift bag, expensive perfume I'd never wear, a card signed by his assistant. Sorry I missed dinner. This deal is going to change everything for us. I looked at him carefully. What deal? Just some acquisition stuff, nothing you'd understand. Very technical. There it was again, the casual dismissal, the assumption I couldn't comprehend complicated business. Try me, I said. It's late, Cam. You don't want me boring you with corporate structure talk. He kissed my forehead and went to shower, leaving me sitting on our bed, holding a gift his assistant picked out, on my 30th birthday. The birthday he'd forgotten, because he was too busy acquiring pieces of my family's company. I smiled, opened my own laptop, and started documenting everything. Every late night, every dismissed question, every condescending comment. If he thought I was too stupid to understand business, I'd let him keep thinking that. While I built my case, I became the perfect wife. Smiled more, asked fewer questions, stopped requesting access to accounts, focused on my charities. Wesley relaxed, started leaving more papers out, taking more calls in front of me, assuming I wasn't paying attention. But I was recording everything. His late-night calls? Recorded on the voice memo app he didn't know I had. His portfolio documents left on his desk? Photographed while he slept. His arrogant comments about modernizing my father's company? All saved. I learned about Nevada shell companies, about beneficial ownership structures, about how to hide assets in plain sight, and I learned that my husband was very good at all of it. But he made one critical mistake. He assumed I was ornamental, that I'd never fight back, that I'd accept whatever role he assigned me. He was so wrong. I just needed time to understand what he'd done, time to build my counterattack, time to become dangerous. And Wesley, confident in his superiority, gave me all the time I needed. I finally confronted my father. Not at the office, at his house, where Wesley couldn't interrupt. Dad, did you give Wesley access to Delancey Holdings? He set down his newspaper. Looked at me with tired eyes. No. Then how does he own shares? Long silence. He bought his way in, through your trust. The words hit like a physical blow. My trust? The power of attorney you gave him. He used it to authorize share purchases, all technically legal. You knew? I found out 6 months ago. He rubbed his face. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Why didn't you? Because he's your husband. I hoped I was wrong about him. We sat in silence. Finally I asked, how much does he control? 47%. Nearly half. One more strategic purchase and he'd have majority control. He played us both, my father said quietly. I trusted him because you loved him, and he used that trust to build a position we can't easily break. I stood up. Yes, you can. How? Give me time. I'll fix this. My father studied my face, saw something there he hadn't seen before. Okay, he said finally. I trust you. This time, his trust wouldn't be misplaced. I found the documents 2 days later. Buried in old files, Wesley thought I'd never examine. Years ago, when we first married, I'd signed a power of attorney. Just for emergencies, Wesley had said. In case something happens and you need me to handle things. It seemed reasonable, responsible even. But he'd used that authority to make moves I never consented to. Transferred funds from my trust, authorized purchases in my name, created a complex web of ownership that technically kept everything legal. Barely. Amanda reviewed the documents. "This is gray area," she said. "He'll argue he was acting in your financial interest. Using my money to buy control of my family's company? He'll say he was diversifying your assets, that these were legitimate investments. Can we fight it? Maybe, but it'll be expensive, public, messy." I thought for a long moment. What if I don't fight it legally? What do you mean? What if I outplay him? Amanda smiled slowly. Then you'd need to become exactly what he thinks you're not. A real threat. Yes. Good, I said, because I just re-enrolled in law school. Her eyebrows shot up. Seriously? Starting next semester, online, quietly. I dropped out for Wesley. Now I was going back, not for him, against him. Re-enrollment was easier than expected. My credits were still valid. I only needed 2 more semesters to finish. I registered under my maiden name, scheduled all classes online, told Wesley I was taking art appreciation courses. He barely looked up from his phone. That's nice, babe. Very you, very me. Decorative, harmless, unambitious. While he was busy playing corporate chess, I studied contract law, corporate governance, fiduciary responsibility. Every lecture made me angrier and smarter. I learned exactly how many rules Wesley had bent, how many ethical lines he'd crossed, how many ways he'd betrayed my trust. But I also learned something else. I learned how to beat him. The law wasn't just on his side. It could be on mine. If I was smart enough, patient enough, strategic enough. Wesley had taught me one valuable lesson. Just not the one he intended. He'd taught me that business isn't personal, it's calculated. And I was about to calculate his downfall. 1 credit hour at a time. 3 months later, Wesley got drunk. We were at home. He'd closed another deal. He poured expensive whiskey and laughed at something on his phone. Your father's getting old, he said casually. I looked up from my book. What? His vision for the company. It's outdated, stagnant. The company's doing well. It could do better, with modern leadership. Modern leadership? Like you? He smiled at me. That condescending smile I'd learned to hate. I'm not saying I'd do it alone. Your dad's built something impressive, but it needs fresh energy, aggressive expansion. Aggressive? You'll thank me one day, Cam. I'm modernizing your future. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just taking control, he was planning to push my father out, to restructure everything my family had built. And he expected me to thank him. I closed my book slowly. That's ambitious. That's business. He drained his glass, and I knew. This wasn't just about money, it was about power, about proving he could take something that wasn't his, about winning. But Wesley had made another mistake. He'd told me his plan, assumed I'd be grateful, never considered I might use this information against him. I went to bed early and started planning my counterattack. The Nevada filing took me 3 weeks to find, but I found it. Hidden under layers of shell companies, registered to addresses that didn't exist, connected through a network of beneficial ownership agreements, all leading back to one name, Philip Brennan, the man from Wesley's emails, Wesley's front man, his proxy. The Nevada company held 47% of Delancey Holdings. Technically, Wesley didn't own it directly, but his digital signature was all over the paperwork, his authorization on every transaction, his strategy in every move. I printed everything, created a timeline, mapped the connections, built a case so clear even Wesley couldn't deny it. Then I secured it all. Copies in a safety deposit box, encrypted files sent to Amanda, physical documents hidden at my father's house, because I'd learned something from Wesley. Always have backup, always protect your assets, always assume someone's trying to take what's yours. He'd taught me well, just not wisely. My father called me to his office the next week. Close the door, he said. I did. I made a mistake trusting him, but now I need to know something. He looked at me directly. Are you with him, or with me? The question hung between us. I could choose my husband, the man I'd married, the life I'd built, or I could choose the truth. Give me time, I said. I'll fix this. How? You'll see, but I need you to trust me, completely. My father studied my face for a long moment, saw something new there. Something steel-hard and determined. Okay, he said finally. What do you need? Keep acting normal. Don't let Wesley know we've talked. Let him think he's winning. And when I tell you to move, move fast. He nodded slowly. Your grandmother would be proud of you." Tears stung my eyes, because she would have been. She'd built this company from nothing, fought men who underestimated her, proved everyone wrong. And now I was doing the same thing, using the lessons she'd taught me, the strength she'd modeled, the Delancey name she'd made powerful. Wesley thought he'd married into an empire. He had. But he'd underestimated its empress. The next board meeting arrived. I attended for the first time in months. Wesley looked surprised. "Babe, you didn't tell me you were coming." Last-minute decision. I took my seat. He dominated the entire meeting, presented strategies, made recommendations, smiled at me like I was furniture, decorative, harmless, exactly what he wanted me to be. I said nothing, took notes, and at the end of the meeting, I handed a sealed envelope to the company's lead counsel. "For your review," I said quietly, "time sensitive." The lawyer took it confused. Wesley didn't even notice, too busy accepting congratulations on his presentation, too confident in his position, too sure of his victory. I left the meeting early, drove home, and waited, because the envelope contained everything. Every document proving Wesley's manipulation, every transaction using my power of attorney, every shell company connection, every ethical violation, and a formal request to remove Wesley from all board positions. Immediately, the game was about to change. Wesley just didn't know it yet. The lawyers turned on him fast. By the next morning they had questions. "Mr. Morrison," I stopped myself, following the instruction not to use that name. Let me continue. By the next morning they had questions about signature dates, ownership timelines, beneficial interest disclosures. Wesley got defensive. "This is standard investment strategy. Using your wife's power of attorney to purchase shares in her father's company?" I was diversifying our assets, without her knowledge or explicit consent. The boardroom got very quiet. My father sat at the head of the table, expression unreadable. Wesley looked at me for the first time, really looked, and saw something that made him pause. I wasn't confused, wasn't lost, wasn't the decorative wife he'd married. I was the woman who just handed the legal team a roadmap to his downfall. "You," he said softly. I smiled. "Me." The lead counsel continued, "We need to discuss conflict of interest and potential breach of fiduciary duty." Wesley's face went red. "This is ridiculous. This is serious," my father interrupted. "And we're going to get to the bottom of it." The trap was springing. And Wesley was finally realizing he'd walked right into it. That night, Wesley cornered me in our kitchen. "You think you're going to win this?" His voice was tight with rage. I continued chopping vegetables calmly. "Win what?" "This. Your little power play. It won't work." "I'm not playing anything. Don't lie to me." He slammed his hand on the counter. "You set me up." I set down the knife and looked at him. Really looked. At the man I'd married. The man who'd manipulated me. Used me. Thought I'd never fight back. "I didn't set you up, Wesley. You did that yourself. I own this family now. You own 47%. That's enough, but I'm taking back 53. He laughed, sharp and bitter. "You can't. You don't have the votes, you don't have the authority, you don't have the law degree, the business experience, the spine." I stepped closer. "You're right, I didn't have those things when you married me, but I do now." His face went pale. "What did you do?" "Finished law school, documented everything, built my case." "You can't prove." "I can prove all of it." Silence. Then Wesley did something I'd never seen. He looked afraid. The emergency board vote was called for the following Monday, to remove Wesley from all executive positions. The room was tense. My father sat at one end, Wesley at the other. I sat between them. Exactly where I belonged. The lead counsel read the motion. Based on evidence of conflict of interest and unauthorized use of power of attorney, this board moves to remove Wesley Graham from all positions within Delancey Holdings, effective immediately. "This is insane," Wesley said. "I've increased company value." "Using your wife's money without her consent," the counsel interrupted. "That's not strategy, that's exploitation." The vote began. One by one, board members raised their hands for removal. Wesley's face cycled through shock, rage, disbelief. He looked at my father. "You're really doing this? After everything I've done for this company?" My father's voice was cold. "You did it for yourself, not for us." The final vote came from an unexpected source. My father himself. "All in favor?" He raised his hand. "Motion carries. Wesley Graham is removed from all positions, effective immediately." Security appeared at the door. Wesley stood slowly. This isn't over. I met his eyes. Yes, it is. He left. And I turned my chair toward the head of the table, where I belonged. I was named acting CEO that same afternoon. Unanimous vote. The daughter, who was never supposed to lead. The wife who was supposed to stay decorative. Now sitting at the head of the table. My father addressed the board. Camille has proven herself more than capable. More importantly, she's proven her commitment to this company's values. He looked at me. Values your grandmother built that I've tried to maintain, that Camille will carry forward. The board members nodded. Some looked relieved. Others looked surprised. All of them looked at me differently now. Not as the boss's daughter, as the boss. I stood. Thank you for your trust. I won't waste it. That evening I sat in the CEO's office. My grandmother's desk, my father's chair, now mine. I thought about Wesley, about how close he'd come to taking all of this, about how completely he'd underestimated me. And I smiled, because the greatest victory isn't just winning, it's proving everyone wrong who bet against you. The divorce papers arrived at Wesley's condo 3 days later, hand-delivered by a process server, along with something else, a revised prenuptial agreement, filed with the court, showing every transaction he'd made without my consent. Every manipulation, every lie, all documented, all admissible. He tried to call me. I didn't answer. He tried to negotiate through lawyers. I refused, because you don't negotiate with someone who made you collateral. Someone who bet your entire life on his ambition. Someone who thought you'd never be strong enough to fight back. The divorce moved forward quickly. Nevada shell companies dissolved, shares redistributed. Wesley's carefully built empire dismantled. One legal filing at a time. My lawyer called with updates. He's asking for settlement discussions. No, he's claiming he has rights to shared assets. He has rights to nothing. Prove it. Already did. I hung up, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just cold certainty that I was doing exactly what needed to be done. Wesley had taught me business isn't personal. I was proving he was right. This was just business, and business was about winning. 6 months later, everything was finalized. The divorce was complete. Wesley kept his personal assets, lost everything connected to Delancey Holdings. The Nevada companies were dissolved, shares returned to the family trust. But I had one more move. One Wesley didn't see coming. I sold my personal 6% stake, not to family, to a competitor. A company my father had been negotiating with for years. A strategic partner who'd give us access to European markets. Completely legal. Completely strategic. And completely devastating to Wesley's remaining position. Because when I sold those shares, it triggered a valuation review, which dropped the value of his 47% by half. Overnight. His remaining shares, purchased at premium prices, were suddenly worth a fraction of what he'd paid. The investment he'd built his whole strategy around? Worthless. Amanda called me, laughing. You bankrupted him? No, I corrected. I outplayed him. Same thing. Not quite. Bankruptcy implies failure. This was Stroud like him. No, I said firmly, I sound like my grandmother. Because she'd taught me this. Not through words, but through example. You don't destroy your enemies, you simply outmaneuver them. One signature at a time. I ran into Wesley one last time. At a charity function I couldn't avoid. He looked thinner, older, defeated. He approached me cautiously. Camille? Wesley. Awkward silence. You really did it, he said quietly. Did what? Destroyed me. I looked at him directly. No, I protected what was mine. There's a difference. I loved you. You loved what I represented. Access, power, a shortcut. He flinched. I never meant. Yes, you did. You calculated everything. You just didn't calculate that I'd calculate back. I turned to leave. He grabbed my arm gently. Was any of it real? I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. I don't know. Was it for you? I pulled away and walked out of his life. For the last time. 6 months later, the company hit record profits. My father retired, putting me in charge permanently. I expanded into 3 new markets. Built partnerships Wesley couldn't have imagined. Proved that the decorative daughter knew exactly what she was doing. And when people asked how I turned things around so quickly, I'd smile and say, I had a good teacher. He showed me exactly what not to be. Then I'd return to work. Building the empire he'd tried to steal. One decision at a time. One victory at a time, proving that underestimating someone isn't just a mistake, it's a gift, because it lets you see them coming. right before you outplay them completely.